All right, so good evening, everyone. Dan Gordon from Flash Fire. Thank you for joining me this evening, and to my two guests, which I will let them introduce themselves in a minute. I just wanted to, well, thank you guys for joining. And I gotta say, I've been talking to them and other people. I've been in the fire service since 2003 in Connecticut, and I don't think there's ever been a time where there are as many job openings for as few qualified candidates as there are now. I would say that now is a good time if you're looking to get on the job to get on the job. There's a lot of movement, retirements. There's a lot of expansion from some departments. So I definitely think now is a great time. So I thank you all for joining us, and hopefully you'll get something out of it tonight. So without further ado, I will open it up to, we'll start with Chris just because he's on the top there. So Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Dan, for inviting us to participate in this. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris Sack. I'm a battalion chief in the Milford Fire Department. 31 years on the fire department. Currently, right now, I sit in the chief of planning, safety, and training position, which in the planning aspect coordinates all the recruit entry level exams, promotional exams to lieutenant. So we got some good data that we're going to show you tonight. Everybody that knows me knows I like data. So we're going to kind of delve into our last written test that we just had. And currently, hopefully within the next couple of days, we're going to be announcing our next recruit exam. So like Dan said, now is the time if you want to get onto a fire department. Whether it's, up, down, north, south, east, west, whatever, now's the time. Lots of opportunity.
Thanks, Chris. John, what about you?
Well, once again, Dan, thanks for having us. It's a pleasure and an honor to sit in the Flash Fire Industries realm. So a little bit about myself. Currently working as the deputy fire chief in the town of Wilton. Been there about a year, and I'm responsible for training and basically operations on a day-to-day basis. With that being said, I've also been in the fire service 42 years. Started out as a volunteer in Trumbull, which I'm still proud to be today, and worked 22 years in the town of Westport. Left there as a shift commander, and also have a business that I run called Promotional Prep and Training. So I do preparation for oral boards for entry level and for promotional level. I actually see a couple of my students that are sitting here tonight that I'm exceptionally proud of. I'm sure they're going to enjoy this evening's show. So we look forward to trying to give you good information, trying to give you insight as to what to expect, and hope that you send us some questions and also take a lot away from this evening. And I know Chris, myself are always available if you want to reach out to us.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. So I have four main questions that we're going to go over tonight. Within those four questions, I know that Chris and John both have their, I'm not going to call it pet peeves, but their core competencies, if you will, mixed into that they'll really harp on. And again, I think it's important to kind of explain why John and Chris are here, other than, that they want to see you get hired and succeed. But there's a big difference between being and I'm not saying that they're not good firefighters, so that's not what I'm saying, but there's a big difference between being a good firefighter and being able to get hired on a job. And what I mean by that is I get people to ask me, well, you got on FDNY, how did you do it? And I'm the wrong person to ask. I never sat through an oral interview. I never had an interview process. It was one written, and I got lucky. So when you're looking to get hired, there are things that you have to do, and there's advice that you need to take that will help you look good to the brass that you need to get hired from. So I think it's important to differentiate those two. If you want to learn how to force a door, I'm here. I'll show you. But if you want to learn how to get hired on the fire department, or you want to learn leadership stuff and stuff like that, that's what tonight's for. Really just getting hired and making yourself the most sought after candidate that you can.
Yeah, Dan, I couldn't agree with you more. You think about preparation. You just can't show up to think, hey, I'm going to go to a job, whether it's the Milford Fire Department, Wilton Fire Department, whatever, you need to prepare for the position. And the more that you prepare, you're going to get better at it. You may not get the first shot, second shot, but definitely, the more you prepare, the better candidate you're going to be. And when you go to that oral interview, which we'll talk about later, that's going to come out in the first couple of minutes. Like, wow, this guy is sharp, he's polished, and he's passionate.
Cool. So I'll read through these 4 questions as we're going. If you guys have questions, you can either jot them down or just put them in the chat window, and then I can ask Chris or John, or they'll see them and we can address them as it comes up. Actually, what I'll do, just so in case you want to ask a question that you don't want everyone to see, what I'll do is I'll change it so that only I will see the questions, and then I can address them to Chris and John. So these are the 4 main things we're going to cover tonight, plus whatever you guys have. So what should you do leading up to applying? Resumes, classes to take, personal prep, things like that. Number 2, what should you expect for the written? Types of questions, what are the common issues that are found? Number 3, what should you expect for the oral? Again, common types of questions that you'll see, dress code, common issues that are found. Number 4, what should you expect for the academy and how to prepare for it? What is the daily grind like up at the Connecticut Fire Academy? I know John teaches there sometimes as a per diem. Chris, I know you've done a lot there before, so you can definitely address that. So those are the big 4 questions. And then there's a couple that guys put in when they signed up that we'll address as well. And anything else that comes up, just let me know. So take it away, guys. We'll start. Well, let me not take it away. I'll do number 1, and then I'll start with John and go to Chris. So leading up to applying, what should you do? What classes should you take? Maybe you're a volunteer, maybe you're not even in the fire service. Are there any classes that you can take to prepare you? Should you take fire 1 and 2? That's always, people always think I take fire 1 and 2, that'll make me look better. Does it make you look better? What should you do leading up to wanting to get on the job? John, go ahead.
Just to get started, I call it resume building. So if you want to put yourself and set yourself up for success, you want to be able to know how to speak our language, how to work in our business, and understand our industry. So what do I mean by that? By putting yourself into a situation where you might be able to get on a volunteer fire service, wherever it may be, that's the first thing I would look to do, because I want to acquaint myself. First of all, I want to see if this really is an industry that's for me. If this is, as we just said, I spoke to some folks today. There's 350 people signed up for the consortium as of today. The last time they ran this, there was 700. So we're at the 50% mark. So of those 350, how many of them really know what the fire service is and want to be involved with the industry? They may find out it's not for them. So my first thing would be is find out if it's something you want to do. And if it is, begin your resume building. I think, Dan, you talk about fire 1, fire 2. For us, when we hire somebody, they have to have their Q, because our department's so small that their first day they're operating apparatus. So I look at the little things. Certifications and classes go a long way. And I also think, why do you want this job? You have to reflect on that. Is it something that I think I'm going to spend my life at? And don't just look at it for the benefits. All right. The benefits aren't what you're there for. You're there to be passionate about the job, and you want to make sure that you're going to be able to do the job on an everyday basis for the next 30 years. You have to reflect inside. But I think preparing yourself and why do I want this job is a good start. Chris?
Yeah, John, we had talked, last week, and that was one of my big things. Why does an individual want to be a member of the Milford Fire Department, or why does an individual want to be a member of XYZ Fire Department? That's what everybody has to really answer. Why do I want this job? Whether it's a small community or a large community, I suggest everybody that's here, Google or look on YouTube for Simon Sinek why. He talks about trying to do it. And when I talk to new recruits or I talk to new fire officers, we relate a couple different things. We look at our mission statement, we look at our core values, and then we look at our vision. And I tend to say that the mission statement is basically what we do in the fire service. Our core values is how we do it. And I always tell whether it's the new officer or again, the recruit firefighter, why do you want to do this job? What is your vision? If you look at the Milford Fire Department, we are a paramedic service. About 60% of our calls are EMS related. So if your why is, I want to go to fires like Dan Gordon every single day, boom, boom, boom. I want a big city and stuff like that. The Milford Fire Department is not for you, and then that's okay. We're drastically changing. All of us, the fire service has changed since I became a member in 1990. It's going to change in the next 5 years drastically, and the fire service has to be ready for it. So I really implore everyone, look to see what your why is. And we'll talk later about interview questions, but that could be a question. Hey, what's your why? Why do you want to be part of the Milford Fire Department? Why do you want to be part of the fire service? What do you want to do? Dan, you talked about, or I'm not sure if it's Dan or John, but you mentioned firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. 30 years ago, that didn't matter. 10 years ago, that didn't matter whether you had firefighter 1 or firefighter 2. But I think now we have reduced budgets. Financially, it's very challenging for a fire chief to run his department. So if you look at in the Milford Fire Department, we were trying to hire 11 individuals. We hired 8, but my budget doesn't allow for that. So now these individuals have to go to the fire academy. Now they have to have special training. And we have collective bargaining agreements, and it requires you to go to the Connecticut Fire Academy to do the recruit program and learn. But I really see in the next 3-5 years, that might be waived. That might be changed because I just can't afford it as a fire service. So for an individual now to get firefighter 1 and firefighter 2, it, like you said, John, it prepares them, it gets them ready, it builds their resume. So now I'm getting a stack of papers and I have who has firefighter 2 and who doesn't. Well, I need to save some money in the XYZ fire department. I'm picking from the pile that already has firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. I'm already picking from the pile that has EMT. I think that's the way the fire service is going to turn. I could be wrong, but I'm going to look at as a fire chief of like, who's ready to go? Who do I need to put through a quick orientation, get back onto the floor? Currently, right now, we're going to have 12, our next recruit exam, 12 positions, right? 12 positions. Last time we had 88 individuals take our recruit exam and 40 people pass the written, all right? Great odds. So, you're looking at what do? Prepare, figure out your why, build your resume. You're going to be a better candidate.
And Chris, just to build on what you just touched on. So many of you don't know, but the Connecticut Fire Academy, because we had 91 applicants for recruit program before it started recently, they were telling departments that they weren't going to be able to put people into the program. So the Fire Academy was entertaining a 6-week program for those people that already had Fire 1 and Fire 2 certifications. And it would be a hands-on practical program over a 6-week period that the candidates would commute back and forth to the Fire Academy up in Windsor Locks, and they would attend their classes Monday to Friday with no stayover. If it got that bad to where they could not entertain people on a regular basis of the 60 or 70 students they could optimally have in a big program, they are seriously looking at that program. So Chris brings up a good point. If you're already pre-certified, and I would strongly encourage you to get your EMT, or if you want to go for paramedic, you're guaranteed a job. I mean, there's, especially with the consortium, you're going to walk in there. At best, they have 13 people on that list, and they are gone before the first week is up when that list is certified. So it may not be the road you're looking to go down initially, but it's a guarantee for a lock on a job, and probably with a decent department.
So John, I do want to touch on that, 2 things. The importance of EMT and or medic. How important is it? like, all right, so Wilton runs EMTs, Milford runs EMTs. To me, medic is like a whole nother ball game. But on the EMT level, how important is it for someone to come in and already have their EMT before they get hired? Is it a prerequisite at most jobs, or is it you have it within a year? And then while we're on the, as we're applying, we'll touch on CPAT as well. We'll get into that. So start with the EMT side.
If Kristen, if you don't mind, I'm going to use a personal experience. 4 years ago, I took the consortium test after I was forced into retirement, and I had to go through the consortium exam, and I got my number. I got my raw score when I got done as a 33. I was candidate number 33. As soon as they made out the EMT list, I dropped to number 10. So I skipped 23 spaces in that list, and it brought me down to top 10. And I was offered a job that following December, which I in turn turned down. But long story short, it actually gained me 23 positions on the exam list, where if I didn't have that, like I said, I probably would have sat at 33rd, and who knows if I would have gotten a job, because 4 years ago, jobs were getting tough to come by. The list was 700, 800 people, 800 candidates, for maybe 40 positions, because I think there were only 8 or 9 departments at that time. So I think that certification, it's paramount today. If you're trying to take an exam without your EMT, and they're a first responder department, and I know Chris will elaborate on this because of his background, but I would say it's a necessity. That and Q too. If you can get your Q, it really opens doors with a Fire 1 and Fire 2.
And in case you guys aren't aware, a CDL B would suffice,
Yep.
or an A would suffice
Yep.
for a Q. So if you have a CDL but not a Q, that's fine.
Sure. Chris?
Yeah, so let me chime in with my personal experience. Milford Fire Department, like I said, EMS-based agency, 60% of our calls are EMS related. If you look at the situation, we run 24-hour paramedics, we run transport. The paramedics aren't there. The numbers are dwindling, like John said. The consortium test has, less than half. This is not a Connecticut problem. This is a nationwide problem, whether it's paramedic, whether it's EMT, whether it's firefighters, for whatever reason. I believe, again, you have your EMT coming into the door. It's a requirement for Milford. So we are going to open up the test. In the past, we've said, hey, you need to have your EMT when you apply for our job. Well, if you look at just everything that's happened with COVID, with the situations that are going around, EMT classes have kind of been scarce. They've gone virtual. They haven't been able to do practical stuff. So we looked at the recent EMT classes that are being held and said, all right, let's not require EMT at the time of application, but at the time of hire, we're going to require EMT. We're also looking at giving paramedics additional points on the test. So if, myself and Dan Gordon are taking the test and I'm a paramedic, 10 points is a lot of points to be offering to an individual to further jump, like John said, 33 to 10, it's 23 different spots. So I think if you're going in Connecticut, you're going to an EMS, a fire department that does EMS, EMT is extremely, extremely, extremely important.
Great, thank you. I'll stick with you, Chris, Mr. Fitness. So CPAT, I'll bring up, just give a very quick, I'm going to share this screen of what the CPAT is. John sent this to me a few minutes ago, but just kind of give a quick rundown on, CPAT's required, right? So I can't even get hired without doing the CPAT. Is that different for any department? Just kind of run through that real quick.
Yeah, so John put together, what the stations are and stuff like that for CPAT. Is CPAT required? For Milford, it is not, but we run our own agility test. So for departments, I need to have some type of written exam Usually there is a physical type of exam, and then there is a interview process getting you onto the job. The physical portion not only says, hey, can this individual do the job? But if you look at different things, they'll start to say, is this firefighter going to get hurt 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road? And that's what an administrator looks like. So here's the CPAC individual stations. You look at our test, there's flexibility in there, there's swimming in there. So we take this and looking like, all right, what are the problems in Milford and what are we going to do? So if the individual is very flexible, he is going to not have the lower back injuries. If he could do a lot of pull-ups, he's got good shoulder strength. So we're not going to have the rotator cuff tears that we currently see in the fire service. So yes, we have to maintain all that physical fitness. CPAT is not required for our job. But we're switching towards that, and we have what we call the MPAT. Just add substitute Milford in there.
And you're definitely, I would say the minority in not having CPAT as a requirement.
Yeah, everybody else I think really does have that CPAT.
Yeah.
You look at CPAT; it's a standardized course. It was designed between the International Association of Firefighters and the International Association of Fire Chiefs. They combine together. It's a good, solid test. It's standardized. It's the same for everybody. And, you look at it and it's a solid test.
And it's pass fail. So you're not ranked based on how you finish or anything.
Correct.
John, I know you have, what are your thoughts? CPAT tips, it's run. So the CPAT, for those of you that aren't aware, it's run through the Connecticut Fire Academy. It's run in Meriden. And correct me if I'm wrong, either you guys, it's outdoors. So it's only run during the nicer months of the year. I saw on Facebook today, it looked like Bridgeport was putting together one, but I think it's just for Bridgeport. Hartford might do something.
In the future, you may see something from the Connecticut Fire Academy going towards East Hartford inside.
Okay. So, I mean, that would be huge because it's year round. But if you guys ever end up in a jam, usually what'll happen is you'll be required to have a current CPAT card. But if you're in a jam, there are guys I know that have actually flown to Florida for the weekend and done their CPAT, got their CPAT card down there, and then come back up and use that to get hired on the job. And I know people that have done that last minute. Their CPAT card literally expired in February and the CFA wasn't open until April, and they had a job offer in March. And so they used that as the gap. And you just have to look at everything that you do as an investment in your future. If you pay John, 50 cents an hour to tutor you, that's an investment in your future. So I see the eyes go up at that. But, all of this stuff you have to look at it as an investment in your future. So I don't mean to go on my tangent, but John, what are your thoughts on CPAT and stuff?
So just to brief over the Bridgeport thing. So that center is open for applicants that are applying to the city of Bridgeport. So they've been doing this about 3 years. Because when they were originally building it, I was giving Chief Ron Rolfe a hand with it. So it is a center that duplicates the CPAT so that folks in the city who don't have the ability to try it out to see if they want to try for the job can go there and actually try it. But I will tell you, for someone who went through it in the mid-age of the 50s of age, it's a demanding test. I had a 19-year-old gentleman ahead of me who didn't make it off the Stairmaster. And I was pretty amazed that he could not last 3 minutes and 20 seconds with 75 pounds on his shoulders and on the vest, and understanding that you can't touch the rail, and knowing that basically once you get past the Stairmaster, which is mental and physical, you need to prepare yourself. The rest of the events, in my eyes, were fairly simple. They're firematic events that you should be able to do with no problem, with the exception of the last two. The dummy drag is very demanding, and the push-pull at the end is demanding if you don't know how to prepare for those. The rest in the middle, fairly simple, dragging a hose. What you have to do is pace yourself. They give you 10 minutes, I want to say 20 seconds or 30 seconds, right? If you pace yourself, you should have no issues. But if you don't prepare yourself, if you physically walk in there thinking, I'm just going to walk in here and take it, you will probably get your butt whooped. And I know at my age, the first time I went through it, I had prepared, but I did not prepare enough. You really have to blast yourself into a physical fitness program that's going to make you be able to perform physically for 10 minutes under high stress and high duress. And it's not that hard, but you just have to be there and put it in your mind that for the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, it's not going to happen in a week. You've got to prepare your body for that test.
Yeah, John, to emphasize what you said, preparation is key, and it's not a month away. Like, oh, I got to go to the gym. I got to start running on the treadmill. This is something, the events of the CPAT, or the events of the Milford MPAT, different things. Get that information and just start practicing. Practice 3 months out, 6 months out, prepare for it. Because if you all of a sudden decide 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to start going to the gym, it's probably too late. Same thing with preparation for the written, oral. It's too late when you start doing stuff at the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, my Stairmaster, I was doing over 5 minutes at 60 steps per minute because I didn't want to fatigue. And you want to make sure that you over prepare yourself so that it's not a challenge. Your goal is to pass on your practice exam. It's not to go back and take the exam, because you don't want that mental thought process sitting outside that fence looking like a prisoner waiting to go in, because that's what we looked like. And I was just amazed at what it looked like. The body count sitting, waiting to go in there. And to walk in there and know that almost 40 to 50% of the people fail, that was the failure rate back then. And I don't know what it is now, Chris, you might have some numbers.
I don't have the exact numbers. I did it a long time ago. I was coordinating it. And at that time, that data showed the majority of the people failed the first event, the Step Master. And, that's just practice.
You can't touch the railing. So if you watch the videos, it shows you, keep your hands in. They're going to give you gloves. You're going to have a helmet on. You're going to have a 75-pound vest on. And you have to be physically prepared. I'm sure quite a few of the people sitting in front of us probably have done it already.
Yeah.
But
so thank you. Before we move on to our next, I know I had it and you mentioned it real quick, resume building, but I know that that's one of your, big fish, John. So do you want to touch on what you mean by resume building? Do you actually go into an interview handing in a resume? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my personal feeling is, and I know I'm sure Chris agrees, to be prepared shows the panel everything. And if you walk in with a resume, you're basically telling them that you're prepared. And my thought process on the resume is significant. It's work experience, it's education, it's your talents. Listen, here's what I'm going to tell you. You have 15 minutes to sell yourself to a panel for 25 to 30 years. All right, that's the agreement. You're going to sell yourself to a panel for the next 25 to 30 years, because that's the investment they're making. And they want to make sure that their investment is wholesome. And as Chris talked about with the MPAT, we want to make sure that the person we're hiring is physically able to do the job. That's why the test exists. Well, building your resume is giving them insight as to what talents you possess. And what do I mean by that? Some of the things, strengths and weaknesses. It's always a question on every test that I've ever sat on a panel. Give me a strength, give me a weakness. And how do you build on your weakness? What have you been doing to improve things you've been poor at? What's the last thing you fixed or repaired? What tools did you use to do it? Things like that. If you're a gunsmith, if you're a plumber, and I hate to say it this way, but if you have a trade or a skill set, those things are basically gone in our industry. And they were the bread and butter when I started as a young firefighter. And those are the people I learned from. And also, if you have a military background, those things already tell me that you're disciplined, you're an apprentice, you're studying to get better, and that you're looking to get on a job. Firefighting is an apprenticeship. And when you start this job, you start out with very little information and very little knowledge. But over the you set yourself with and the individuals that you hang around with at the firehouse, you're going to build your resume and become a better person. But any skills, talents, pertinent levels of certifications, courses, conferences, periodicals that you read. I know Chris loves to read, and I'm a big advocate of it. There's a lot of learning to be done. What are you going to be wearing to your interview as a candidate? That to me is extremely important, along with the resume. You know, are you going to walk in a polo shirt, or are you going to be in a shirt and tie? Remember, you want to show the panel respect and dignity. And that's one of the things I look at. But with the resume building, it's really experience, education. You don't have to have a college education. Tell me what you did growing up. Tell me what you do now, and tell me some of the jobs that you've had. But make sure they parallel themselves to what our job descriptions are about being a firefighter.
I remember when I was in probie school, and they one day they said, anyone here chef? And, you know, 2 or 3 people raised their hand. Oh, I used to cook. He goes, never say that when you walk into the firehouse. All you'll be doing is cooking for your first year.
So that's true, but it's also a talent that's
absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
an absolute talent in the firehouse, because some guys just can't cook.
No, absolutely.
You know, but Chris, what do you got?
You know, one of the things that you said is really good. Let me just have a train of thought real quick. But with your resume and developing it, take the time. The individuals that are listening to us tonight, you may think, well, I have no experience. I'm a new person. I'm 20, 21 years old. I don't have a resume. Sit down with someone. You know, John gave you a bunch of, you know, your strengths, your weaknesses. Ask your friends, ask your girlfriend or boyfriends, ask your parents. Hey, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Get someone else's perspective. Get some help. There's, whether it's you go on the internet and take a professional resume builder course or something along that lines and pay someone, but develop a good resume. Have it on good quality paper. You know, put some type of binder cover on it, because when you walk in, if I'm interviewing 10 individuals and only 2 of them develop a resume and hand it to us with the proper amount of copies in good paper, I'm going to be like, wow. It's the same thing. One of my big things, you know, John was talking about being dressed well. Mine is a good watch. And I will look at the watch before I'm even looking at the candidate going, does this guy have a watch on? And I'm not talking about some G-Shock, you know, that's all beat up. You know, go buy yourself a decent watch and be able to, or borrow a watch or something like that. Again, it's your first appearance that is going to dictate that 20, 30, sometimes 40 years. So resume, absolutely. Get some help on it. It's so easy to do. And you'll have a good document that you'll start building on from now on. At the level we're doing now, 1 page is fine. And when you get to a level of a fire chief, you know, you're going to be looking at 5 or so pages.
So one of the things, guys, that I and gals, I want you to know is your resume becomes your template to present yourself off of. And what do I mean by that? It's your script to tell your history. So how do I want to put this? A lot of times I ask people, you know, have you ever run a gas powered motor? Did you cut the lawn growing up? Did you have to do chores around the house? Were there things that you did in the jobs you worked in? I don't care if you worked in an ice cream shop. Did you have to clean the machine at the end of the night to understand how to put it back together? That's mechanical aptitude. And if you have some of that, those are things that are really a necessity in our industry.
And hey, John.
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt you, but the other night we were talking about, and you talked about the nanny. Yes. I thought that was really good. If you could relay that story, because sure. That was an individual that said, I got no experience.
Yep.
And
so
At
But
the
yeah,
end of it, it's trust.
yes, absolutely. So I had a young man that came to me, 21 years old, and we were talking about his previous jobs. And he told me that his current job, he was a nanny in a very well-off town locally, that he was taking care of a home during the day while the parents were working and the mom was away. He was taking care of 3 children, a 9,000 square foot home, and he was making sure the kids were fed, taken to whatever appointments they needed to go to, picked up at school and so forth. And he was being compensated very well. But what that showed me was, think about someone willing to give a 21-year-old guy their 3 children to take care of. They gave him a car to drive around, and they left him in a home that was in excess of $2 million in value. And the trust level that shows by those parents leaving those children in his care, in my watch, it is immense. And that's a lot of responsibility. And I know, Chris, when we talked the other day, I had a 23-year-old gentleman who was a manager at a hotel of a bar. And I asked him, what's the value of the alcohol located in the basement of this hotel? It was $750,000. That's how much booze was in the basement that he was responsible for on any given day, pulling inventory, doing cash flow, and so forth. So you may not think that your job has value or that you have responsibility, but when you start to look around, and that's one of the things I do with most of the folks that I work with, the clients I work with, what's the value that you're responsible for? And I don't care what the job was. If you're running a snack shack at a pool, there's a couple $1,000s in there of value that you're responsible for. And you have to look at that and bring that to light and let people know about that responsibility.
Awesome. All right, so I want to move on so that we can make sure we hit everything tonight. So obviously we can circle back anytime that we need to, but when we're talking about the written exam, so generally most exams out there are divided into a written and an oral of some sort. And so when we're talking about the written exam, for the most part, what types of questions are we talking about and what are the common issues found? And I think it's important that we also mention that sometimes guys realize with the big cities, the Hartfords, the Waterburys, the Bridgeports, New Havens, they may have their own written that may not be like what you're going to see elsewhere. If it's like a civil service exam, it may be a little bit different. So what we're talking about tonight, for the most part, and there's still skills that are going to help you everywhere, but I would say that the written, and correct me if I'm wrong, the written questions we're going to talk about are what you're going to find probably on the non-super large cities, if you will.
Yeah,
John,
I
you
would
want-
agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, so the consortium exam or consortium, whatever the hell you want to call it, I mean, they have your basic questions. There's going to be math. There's going to be logical, mechanical aptitude. But one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is their psychological questioning that asks you the same questions over a period of 30 to 50 questions. So you may see the same question in a 150 question exam 3 times. It won't be the identical question. It's going to be asked in a different context, but the way you answer it is going to show your biases and how you feel about society, how you feel about treating people. And they're looking at your psychological background and they're looking at your impact, in addition to the standard questions that we all get. You're going to get light math, like I said. But for the most part, most exams today are probably at a 10th grade level if it's outside an inner city. All right. And they do that on purpose because they want a successful pass rate. Chris?
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of delve into the data. So the individual prepping for a written exam, probably even before you're thinking of doing it, and I got a little visitor that just wanted to come into the TV screen here. This is Marley. So, but, go on Amazon, go to the bookstore, get the different prep guides that are out there. Those are going to give you a good basic foundation. So a written exam is broken down into different subtests, and there's different categories, and we're trying to get the best candidate and trying to figure out what everything's going. So that's the first thing I say is go out and buy a couple of these books. They'll have practice exams there. You may be able to find something on the internet. Stay away from the apps that are there. Get a piece of paper, be able to write it down, make some photocopies, take the test over and over and over again. The next thing I think you should do if you're taking a written exam is, contact some people in the fire department or hunt around or look around, try to figure out what testing company they are using. If you look at, they may have used the same testing company for the last 3 or 5 test cycles. Get that test company, go on the internet and go to that test company's website, because a lot of times they'll have tips and tricks. They'll have practice exams, and whether you're taking a McCann test or something else, they are designed differently. And they're going to be, all right, well, if I take one, this was easy, this one was very hard. If you look at our last written exam that we did, it was broken into 7 different subtests. So the first one I'll read is interest in firefighting. Second one was teamwork and compatibility. Third, problem solving, map reading. 4, spatial visualization. We'll talk about that a little bit. 5, attentiveness, visual pursuit, so taking and drawing little things and going around. 6, problem solving, logical thinking. And then 7, problem solving, mechanical ability. So this testing company says, all right, this is going to give me a well-rounded candidate. Some of the things that they have, you look at one and it's basically, how does the candidate do visualizing what the inside of a room or the inside of a building looks like? So, are there 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional shapes? That helps a firefighter. You look at our visual pursuit, and that section talks about testing for attentiveness. And they could directly take that attentiveness and go, all right, an individual that scores very high in there is going to do really well in the medical aspect of the fire service. So whether it's a paramedic or an EMT, chaotic situations and the ability to maintain concentration. That's what these tests do. They're not just like, 1 + 1. We're trying to get a good, well-run, a good, well put together firefighter, and we're using science to build on it. Logical thinking. We all know about the mechanical ability, and we talk about pulleys and stuff. That's where these practice tests will help an individual just out of high school or just out of college practice and go, all right, I've never seen pulley systems before. We'll practice with it. So get some of the study books, evaluate what type of testing company they're using, look on their website, and then really delve into that. If you look at some of our data, let me just fast a couple of things. So of those 7 subtests that we had, the lowest 3 things were map reading, that visualization, like what is inside that building, and visual pursuit, drawing the lines through the boxes like a maze. Those were our lowest scoring sections on this last exam. And that the exam that we ran in 2018, those were some of our highest scoring things. So you take the difference between 3 years, and the high scores went to the lowest scores in the sections. What changed? Did the candidate change? Did their ability of learning change? Are we teaching different things in school? So just like we talked about preparing and taking firefighter 1 and firefighter 2 as this individual that's taking these written exams, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. If I'm bad at mechanical ability and trying to figure out these pulleys and these gears and stuff like that, start practicing. Practice, practice, practice. Practice sometimes doesn't make perfect, but practice makes permanent.
Cool. That was a lot. I loved it.
Yeah.
The thing I took out of it, which I never would have thought of, is finding out the company running the test and going to their website. And these are not, like you said, these are not tests that want you to fail. So you just have to figure out what they're looking for to pass, So
Yep.
I thought that was pretty spot on. I'm not sure. So are there any common issues that you see? You mentioned the three sections there. You mentioned the prep, but is there any major issues that you see that people have when it comes to the written? Are they is there any more expansion on that, or did you pretty much sum up what the issues are with the written?
Well, the last exam that we had, our scores ranged from like 84 down to, a little bit lower than, 49. So, wide range of stuff. National average, we're not scoring lower than they are doing in this in California. I think, this testing company, there was like 6,000 or so individuals. So we're right around the same. And, I don't know. My first thought was, did the individual prepare? Did he prepare properly? Did he prepare with the right stuff? Did he prepare long enough? I think, whether we could always talk about generations and stuff like that, but, individuals are not good with their hands and their tools and things of that nature. We know that that's a weakness in the fire service, and it's showing on this last, the data set that I have for this last exam. It was some of the lowest scores that were in there. So, that critical thinking, we have to do something to change. So, and I think if an individual firefighter or recruit X says, hey, I'm bad at trying to visualize stuff or trace lines or do that, just a little bit of practice. But again, like you said, know the testing company, because if you don't know what their tests are like, it's going to be a challenge. It's like walking in for a football game and not knowing what your opponent is.
I thought that's a very good point. John, do you have anything else before we move on to the oral side of things?
Yeah, just real quick. Some of the things that I just want to touch on. Make sure you read the directions about the location of the test, what time it starts, arrive early. Make sure you get a good night's rest the night and two before. It means a lot. I was always taught to sit near a window where there's natural light if they'll allow you to. It's a little better on the eyes and it's a little more calming. And when you take the test, go through the questions that you know right away, and don't put yourself in a position where you start getting nervous, you start getting uncomfortable, and you start to sweat, because it doesn't do anything. The tension doesn't help you any. Go through the test the first time, see which questions you answer, go back through the second time. You may find that some of the questions that were answered initially you had a tough time with, you might have gotten some insight while you did the other questions. But I think preparation the night before or the days before are critical to make sure, exercising, making sure you have a clear mind and that you're properly prepared to get there. Make sure your car's going to start. I mean, I hate to say stupid crap like that, but we have people trying to run in a testing room at the last minute, and it's like, it's not going to help your situation.
Hey, John, what do you think about dress code for a written exam?
I think don't look like a slob. All right. Be presentable.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Because the people there, I don't know. I mean, a lot of times the testing agency has their own people, depending on who it is. But in a place like Milford, you run your own exam.
Yes.
And you probably have guys from within the department that are looking at these folks. And it's definitely.
This was New Haven a few years ago.
Okay. Yeah. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
yeah.
I hope it was a dare. I wanted to bring that out tonight. I hope it was a dare and a joke. I don't think it went well.
It's not going to get you any points. All right. But we laugh at it, but it happened. And, do yourself justice, be presentable, put your best foot forward.
Cool. All right. So the oral, which I would say will get a lot of people, meaning, they'll do well on the written, they'll have a good score. And a lot of times they end up falling down on the oral. This is where I think a lot of prep really can help. And so just I'll start with John. What kind of questions are on the oral dress code? What are the common issues that you see? To me, this is kind of what makes or breaks your test in a lot of ways. So what do you got?
And Chris, interrupt at any time. First and foremost with the oral, be presentable. Again, be early. Make sure you're sitting 15, 20 minutes early. Make sure that you're prepared. Have your resume. Make sure that you're well aware of what you're supposed to be doing there. And maybe ask around beforehand to find out what previous panels have been like and what kind of questions they've asked. If you can pursue the department, stop by, talk to people, you might be able to get some insight. But the first question out of the box is always, tell me about yourself. Tell me what you've been doing to prepare yourself, and give me some background on your past work experience. That is going to be the first question. 99% of the time, tell me about yourself. And that's why the resume is so critical. The resume is really, it's your casting call to be able to give them insight about you. It is literally the hardest thing, and Marley will tell you, it's the hardest thing to do is sell yourself to a group of people. But and here's the way I'm going to phrase it, and I talked about it earlier. You have 15 minutes to put your best foot forward to get a job that you would love for the rest of your life. If you can't spend a couple of months, and I'm going to tell you, it's months of preparation before you sit through your first, and you will probably suck at your first few oral boards. You're not going to be good unless you get, I like to tell people, make up your own panels, have your wife ask you your questions, sit in front of a camera, videotape yourself, get yourself to be comfortable in front of either, now the bigger cities are doing things in front of videos, and even the consortium, because of COVID, you had to sit in front of a video camera. That's extremely difficult. But if you prepare yourself by sitting in front of a computer like tonight, and you sit there and you prepare yourself to answer questions, and they have to be well thought through. The only way you can do that is by having a game plan, and that game plan is your resume, because every question eventually will come back to something about you.
Yeah,
Chris?
it's so easy now to video yourself. Come up with your questions, try to figure out your game plan, tape yourself, and then sit down and start watching it and going, ooh, that's how I actually look. Interviewing for fire chief positions, I still do it. I'm trying to catch little things that I don't know that I'm doing, and then trying to come up with a game plan and emphasize things. So, John said it perfectly. Come up with your stuff, video yourself, watch it, sit down, whether, if I pull Marley up and say, hey, Marley, interview me, or my wife or my kids, the more practice you get, the better you are going to be. And I agree with John. The first time you do it, you may be like, I did horrible on this, but there's a science to it. You build on it, you develop yourself, and eventually you'll be like spot on. You're trying to make that first impression very quickly. Look good, get yourself some new clothes, get yourself some good shoes, get yourself a good watch. Be there, be prepared, because as soon as you walk in that door, they're probably making their decision within the first 5-10 minutes.
Okay, so after they get into your resume or asking about you, what are some of the other common things that they may start to delve into? And John, if you had something else, I just kind of cut you off, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, not a problem. So typically it's an introduction question. It's to tell us about yourself, your work experience, your background, all right, and what you've been doing to prepare for the job. And then there's going to be a follow-up question of some sort. And that question is going to delve a little deeper. Why do you want to be a firefighter? What are some of the values or skills that you possess that you think would make you a good firefighter? What are some of the things that you expect to achieve in this business? And what are your thoughts about certain aspects of the business? I just look at it, ethics and integrity questions. Today, ethics and integrity are everything. Look at our societal base today. There's more conflict going on with ethics and integrity. So, and integrity is one of the big things in our industry. You know, our job is probably one of the most trusted jobs in the world. You think about it. When you go to an automatic fire alarm, does anybody ever stop you from entering a home or a business? They trust you with their worldly possessions. So diversity, like I said, strengths and weaknesses,
Hey, John.
challenge questions. Yep, go ahead, Chris.
I interrupt you really quick. You mentioned when we first started, we were trying to teach the individuals listening tonight to speak like we are. So just think, you know, now diversity, you have to include equality and inclusion. So those should be the three things. My diversity comes out of my mouth in a question. I'm following up with equality and inclusion, and that rounds out the candidate. And now the people on the board are like, this person knows a little bit about everything and is well-rounded, very well-rounded.
A question that I saw within the last 18 months was about working with transgender and gender neutral firefighters, or those that may be going through some type of a physical change. How would you feel about that? So, and that's a reality in the Connecticut Fire Service. And you better have an answer, you know, because no matter where you're going to work, you're going to be working with a diverse clientele. It doesn't have to be ethnic. It can be what someone feels, you know, their personal feelings are about themselves. So I would have never thought in a preparation for a job as a firefighter that I'd be talking about that. And we as management have to be sensitive.
Yeah, it shows teamwork.
Correct.
Can you work with the team of a diverse individuals? And that's a key thing I'm looking for in a firefighter. Can he be part of the team? You know, absolutely.
And not only that, but the clientele that you're going to service are going to be of that diverse nature. Yeah. And we want to make sure we're not going to have an issue. That plays immense on, you know, part of what we're looking for in a candidate that's going to be someone we can put trust in, great trust.
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean, so I want to circle back real quick. You mentioned, we kind of talked about pick up new shoes, pick up a watch or whatever. What's the dress code for an oral interview?
Chris?
In my opinion, you know, male, suit, tie. You know, research the department. If the department or the city has a certain color, try to pick up a tie. So I went, when I was interviewing, I mean, totally different type of interview. I'm going for the interview for chief's position in New Britain. Well, it's the New Britain Bees. I had a yellow tie on, and just trying to just catch anything little by little. So suit and a tie. Females, you know, something, you know, think of an attorney, a female attorney, you know, dressed as far as you know, a good dress, you know, not revealing, you know, nice shoes, whether they're heels or boots or flats, so you could be comfortable. You know, same thing. It shouldn't matter. You're ready to go to an interview, and I'm seeing the individual for the first time. So dress. You know, you hate to say it, but dress to impress.
Yeah, it's a formal presentation on your part of putting your best foot forward, so that here's the thing, and I'm going to say this. This is one of the questions that I love to ask a candidate. Tell me why I should hire you over the other 64. All right. If you can answer that question comfortably and know why you think that you're the best, and it's not the best, you as a candidate, what do you possess as an entity that separates you from everybody else? Because the moment you hit that ball out of the park, you've sold us on the panel.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
if you
Dan.
can, right?
Yeah.
If you can
Good.
tell me that, what makes you different from the others? And I'll tell you, when that person walks in the room and they open their mouth and they really embellish themselves on you and they tell you what their talent is. And it may not be, a blurt out of what they have, but the mannerism and the way they carry themselves, that it blows you away. Or you have a question, like one that I had in an oral interview that I had to ask somebody, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? All right. And they gave me something that I never thought I would hear about having to give up their child because they were getting divorced and they weren't financially able to support that child. So they gave them to their spouse. That to me says a lot about the character of that individual, that they physically, financially weren't able to take care of them. And they knew it would be a better life, even though they were splitting up. What does that say about a person?
Mm-hmm.
That's someone I want to invest in, because it says a lot. And they also said that when they got back on their feet financially, they would love to have their child back. So, what does that say about a person?
We mentioned resume, or Chris, did you have something on that before I ask the next question? It's still on orals, but.
Yeah, so we'll go orals. I got a couple of questions. Just what Danny was talking, or John was talking before, I'm looking for passion. You asked that question, why are you going to hire me? I'm expecting to, like, what, this guy is so passionate about being in the fire service or being in this fire department. I want to hire him right now. That's what I'm looking for.
So I want to spin off on that a little bit, because, and again, when I was looking to get hired, I was fortunate enough, I haven't really gone through the Connecticut process, but 15, 20 years ago, there was definitely a stigma if you were a career guy and volunteered. That seems to have, for the most part, disappeared now. So you're a volunteer, you're interviewing for a career department. Do you want to talk about your volunteer experience? Do you want to embellish your volunteer experience? I would have said 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, that, most of the advice was go in there and pretend you've never done this before. Even if you're fire one, fire two, fire officer or whatever, pretend like this is, you don't even know an air pack. Seems to have changed a little bit. Am I correct on that? Do you want to talk about your volunteer experience? What do you think about that, Chris?
I think you should talk about your volunteer experience. Two reasons. Number one, it's who you are. Be proud of your volunteer. John started it. He's still in Nichols Fire Department, extremely proud of it. I started as a volunteer. It's who you are. It's your basis. Another aspect of it is they're going to find out that you are a volunteer. So I would hate to go and do well on an interview saying I was not a volunteer, and then I'm brought into like a chief's interview and said, "You're a volunteer, I hear? You told my lieutenants that you weren't a volunteer. You're lying." And that could discredit you. So definitely
I'm certainly not saying lie if you're asked about it, but at the same time, I don't think it was considered a resume builder like it is now. Maybe. John, do you agree or disagree?
Well, so that would be part of my resume presentation about tell me about yourself. So I would embellish on it. I would give probably how many years I've been active in the organization or the organizations, because if you've moved around, it's understandable that people move from city to city or town to town. But I think what it does for me is it gives me a background that the individual has experience. But at the same time, I don't want you to go telling me, that you're the chief. And when I ask you, are you going to have a problem going to the Connecticut Fire Academy? And you turn around and tell me, I think it's going to be a waste of time because I'm certified. You basically just showed yourself the door. And I hate to say it that way, but, it's one of those places where, yes, you definitely want to let them know you have experience and that, you've been a member of an organization, but at the same time, be reserved. Let them know, you're proud of your affiliation with the organization, that you are a member, but and some of your accomplishments, because you may be involved with some things that they might be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants a guy who loves pre-planning. because they don't exist, you know? And if I get a guy who does CAD drawings and he's an HVAC guy or he's a technical guy, and he does, you know, air conditioning, heating and ventilation, and he knows how to do mapping, well, damn, that's a guy I might be interested in. You know, he's got a talent. So don't hinder that process. You know, I'm working with a gentleman right now who did a mapping thing for a high school project. He mapped an entire fire district for a career fire department at 17 years old when he was in high school and never thought about being a fireman. So I said, damn, you want to go to work?
Yeah,
I'll give you a job. You know, but that's something that he never thought about and never was going to put on his resume. You know, and he's in his late 30s now, but is that a critical thing that you'd want to know of as an interviewer? Sure, he has the talent. So
Absolutely. So the other question, someone did mention this tonight, and it goes back to our resume. Should you always bring a resume? Many of the oral interviews I've been to instructed me not to bring one, specifically said not to bring anything to the interview. And so where do you draw the line on still wanting to bring your resume, but also wanting to prove that, yes, you can follow directions and read the directions ahead of time? So how do you split that difference there, John?
follow directions.
Follow directions.
If
right?
it does not say anything about not bringing anything, bring your resume. And remember, I bring 6 to 8. Chris, how many you bring?
About the same. You know, you're probably going to have 3 to 4 individuals doing your questions. You may or may not have an individual there representing either the company, and you're probably now these days, you may have somebody from HR there too. So if you look at that, that's 6 people. Have a couple extra copies just in case. You never want to be able, you know, show up with 5 and there's 7 people there. You know,
The other thing, I know we love our phones, and I know we love to bring things with us. Leave your phone outside. I mean, unless your wife's 9 months pregnant and you think your water's going to be breaking, and if that's the case, that was mine at my interview, and I told them I had a pager on, and I said, if it goes off, I'm leaving the interview. And they're like, why? My wife's 9 months pregnant. It puts things in perspective. Let us know, be honest with us. But if they tell you not to bring anything, please don't bring anything.
yeah, follow the directions.
Okay. The other thing, and you kind of glazed over it with the last few years of being virtual, but I think it's worth bringing up that according to the website, this current consortium is going to be 100% virtual. Both the written and the oral board, it says, is going to be done virtually. So how does that change what, you know, does anything that we've said, do we want to update, modify for a virtual, or I don't know how you do a virtual written, so I guess we'll figure that out when it comes, but a virtual oral, you know, sitting up straight, wearing pants or not wearing pants, you know, I mean.
Have a good background.
There you go. So put the background of the department that you're interviewing for, maybe. But that actually does remind me that one thing I've heard, and you guys didn't mention it, I don't know if it's something that is not done, but look up the department before you're going to interview them. I know, I'll throw a name out there. Some may know him, Anthony Reynolds, who I work with in New York. He was a Greenwich fireman before, and I remember him telling me when he went into the Greenwich interview, he knew how much coastline they have, the square miles, how much hydrants it was, what firehouses there were, what the staffing was, things like that. So you can relate to the people that are there and show that you have interest in that department. You know, you're not walking into a Wilton and saying, I want to operate, you know, a 6-man truck company when it's a 6-man shift, you know? So you want to just kind of touch on the importance of that, if it's important? I'll start with Chris.
Yeah, probably the most important thing next to, you know, why do you want to be a firefighter? It is so easy these days to research a fire department. Google search the department, start to look at stuff. John and I had a conversation the other day about Wikipedia. He says stay away from it. I say go for it all the time. And the reason being is when I use Wikipedia to research a fire department, it leads me down other paths. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, let me click on this and let me click on this. And I get like 5 down, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I just found the strategic plan for the department. I never would have thought of that, or I found the budget. These are little things that are going to really make you stand out. As an individual that is interviewing for the Milford Fire Department, if he's mentioning paramedic or transport or dive team or anything and says, hey, you have 21 miles of coastline, you have the most beaches in the state, all of a sudden that's like, hey, this kid has done his homework. All right, let's bump him up a little bit. So absolutely research the fire department. John mentioned it before, take a trip to the fire department, come in on a weekend or something like that, bring some snacks, bring some desserts, and say, hey, is there anybody in the fire department working right now that I could just talk to? I'm a new person and I just want to get in, ask you some questions. And you may turn around and go, I really don't want to work there. Or you may sit there and go, hey, you know what? I really love this fire department. I'm even going further. So gain information. It is so easy these days to find it.
The thing with Wikipedia, the only reason I said that, Chris, I had 5 guys in a row read me Wikipedia. Just the facts from Wikipedia, never went any deeper. So embellish, go deeper. The other thing is go into the union sites, find out what fundraisers they do, find out who or what they do on their time off. So look at it this way. If I'm going to make an investment in you as an employee for the next 25 years, what are you going to do to better the community on your days off, where we do the Milford Oyster Fest and we do our dunk booth, or we do our MDA fundraiser, or we do our balloon parade in Stamford, and we're not paying you to come in. But what you're doing is you're giving back to a community that's going to give you a lifelong career that is COVID proof. It's, you name it, this job, people don't lose their job during, it doesn't matter what the situation is. Very rarely do you see firefighters getting laid off during COVID, or getting, darkened out for hours or anything along those lines. So your job security is there. Give back to the community. It's karma. It's going to come back in other ways. And maybe you create a program, like in Westport, we had a program called Helping Hands. We used to sign up, social services would give us elderly people who needed their gutters cleaned or little jobs done around their house. And we would go out and do those as part of what we did. But if you came into my interview and told me that you knew about this program, it tells me you really researched about our organization, or you did the penguin plunge, or, things about where you saw us. I mean, today, social media is rampant with fire departments doing Facebook and Instagram and everything else. So learn what you can about how they make a difference in the community. I want to know what you know about us. I want to know what you think about us, and what can you do as an employee to make us better? What are you going to bring to my table that's going to separate us from everybody else? And I joked about the CAD stuff, but if I get a guy who comes in and wants to do CAD and he's got the background, that's a guy you're going to let run. After he gets through his probation and does his things, he's going to be a long-term asset.
Absolutely. Before we move on, do you guys have anything else? And we can always jump back if you think of something, but I think we covered the oral pretty well. And for those that are out there, I mean, again, as John kind of alluded to before, he does a lot of prep on this. So if it's something that you are interested in, not that tonight's a sales tactic, his information's up there. You're more than welcome to contact him. I guarantee you he will talk to you for free. And then if you want to meet with him, it'll go from there. So, so the final thing is, now we're heading towards getting the job. Either we've gotten a commitment, or we've gotten hired, and we're going to the Connecticut Fire Academy. So I'm kind of going to run this question in there too, where someone says they have an oral exam in April, but I'm sorry, they have an oral exam before April, but they aren't scheduled to take the CPAT until April. So how does that kind of run in? Like, you can go to your oral interview generally, they're gonna, and if you don't have your CPAT yet, you'll just say, I'm scheduled to take it in April, and I'll talk to you then. Basically, I'll just touch on that real quick, and then we'll go on to the final one. But again, once you guys get in and I'll go off on this, once you get in the habit of you want to test, try to keep the CPAT up to date so that there's never a gap in there, because you don't want to be that where you get that job offer but don't have the CPAT for another month. So I understand things happen. It's very inconvenient that it doesn't get done year round, although it sounds like hopefully soon it will be. But so how would you manage that? You go into your oral interview, you don't have your CPAT, you're going the next month for your CPAT. What would you address? Would you address that in your oral interview? What would you kind of say?
You want to try, Chris? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that, have like, hey, I'm going for my CPAT. I am flying to Florida, or I'm going to Connecticut Fire Academy, and I'm scheduled to take my CPAT on March 1st. And I'm confident that I'm going to pass it. I've been practicing. I have taken this, I've done that. I've hired a personal trainer. And when that is completed, I will provide the documentation necessary for it.
All right, cool.
My response is, so April is going to be when their interview is.
I think their interviews before April. April is when their CPAT is. Okay.
So it's a tough decision. Let me ask you this. Would you feel better walking in knowing you had your CPAT with your interview?
They added that money's tight, so they can't go to Florida ahead of time.
And that's fine.
Which I understand.
Be honest and open with us. Tell us and give us that,
I think it's a good point. Say I would like to go to Florida. Money's a little tight right now. I realize that that's an option. It's just not something I could have put together, but I'm all in.
Right. And I really want this job, and I'm prepared for my CPAT. I will definitely be able to take care of it.
Sounds good. So now you've got that job offer. You're told that you're starting the academy. Just go through a little bit about what the academy is like. I'll have Chris do that since you've done a little bit more of that. And then John, I'll kind of transition to you. A lot of these departments are going to bring you on for a few weeks generally before you go to the academy. So I'll have you kind of touch on maybe what happens there in the couple weeks before the academy. So Chris, having never gone through the Connecticut Fire Academy myself, lay it on us. What's it like? What's the schedule? What should you be prepared for?
Yeah, so currently right now, recruit class 69 just started. They had a couple of hiccups at the beginning. There's 53 individuals in the program. They decided to do the first 2 weeks virtual. So the career fire chiefs develops not necessarily the curriculum for recruit class, but kind of governs it. So the career fire chiefs is made up of all the fire chiefs in the state of Connecticut. And they're like, well, I need a firefighter to be able to do this. I need a firefighter to be able to do that. And that is a challenge because you have, John is a chief in the Wilton Fire Department, and maybe, Chief Edwards in the Bridgeport Fire Department. Totally two different fire departments need two different types of firefighters. So to be able to come together, they've created, it was 15 weeks. They've changed it to 17 weeks. And in 17 weeks, you're there Monday through Friday. Classroom. I'll take class 69. Class 69 is starting sometimes at 5:45 for some of the individuals in the squad to do all their pre-COVID, not necessarily testing, but questionnaire, making sure everybody's got temperatures, making sure everybody's good to go, no, signs and symptoms of being sick to kind of spread that. Once they finish that, they're at breakfast. After breakfast, or actually, I'm sorry, with the breakfast, they're doing some PT. After PT, they're into classroom. And this class is divided, I believe, into 3 different platoons. and they're doing different things at different times. And that allows more what we call sets and reps. So an individual, we just don't want an individual to throw one ladder. We want the individual to throw that ladder numerous times at different positions with different types of gear, and different types of buildings. So class will run usually 4:30-ish in the afternoon. When they finish that, the Fire Academy recruits stay up there Monday through Thursday. They're allowed to go home Friday evening, and then they're back at it. They come back up on Sunday night. So for 15 to 17 weeks, because it may drop down and may be some changes in the next class 70, but you're basically there. It's I want to say it's repetitive stress. So you're doing PT each day, and then you're sitting in the classroom. You have to maintain your academics. You have to maintain your homework. You have to do everything. You're doing the stress of, doing practical exercises. And that's where a lot of individuals start to have some problems after that week 4 or 5 of running every day. After that, climbing ladders and moving stuff, our bodies aren't allowed to recover, or we don't do the best recovery process of making sure we're hydrated and making sure we have electrolytes and making sure we're eating very well. Food is provided at the Fire Academy right now. They're a little bit in lockdown till March 4th, I think. They're not allowed to leave the Academy grounds while they're up there Monday through Thursday. So after that 17 weeks, then that's graduation. Towards the end, they're getting tested for firefighter 1 and firefighter 2, hazmat awareness, hazmat ops. That's both written and practical exercises. And then graduation's really a fantastic time. So it's evolved. When I went in 1990, there was no Connecticut Fire Academy, and it was 5 weeks long. Probably around the same for John. Now we look at it, and it's blossomed to 17 weeks. There are some night classes that are in there. The reason for the 15 to 17 weeks is they cut out a lot of night classes, because I really can't do a good job of, if Dan's doing recruit class 69 and he's in classroom and on the drill ground all day long, I can't keep him in class till 9 o'clock at night doing exercises or doing lectures. He just falls asleep. And if you look at the fire service and the wellness fitness aspect of it, I don't want to feed Dan Monster energy drinks and energy supplements and a lot of coffee at 8 o'clock to keep him awake. So the Connecticut Fire Academy said, hey, let's back off on the night classes and try to figure something else out. So
there might have been a union. There might have been a union issue or two also.
Yeah, there is definitely a union issue with pay, and that's an aspect with the fire chiefs too. It costs money to send somebody to the Fire Academy. It's right now it is $6,800 a piece. John?
Yeah,
yes,
it's
no?
close to, I think our last guy was 7.
Okay.
Close.
So it's close to there.
Right
so that's
there.
a lot of money.
The other
it's
thing
expensive. It's expensive, but also when you think about what you're getting compared to your volunteer department, you send someone to Fire 1 for $1,100-$1,200. You're getting a pretty good deal there. But that's a whole nother. I don't want to go off on that tangent tonight of how expensive that is.
I'm interested. I'm interested with the reduction in night program to see if we have less injuries. I really am, because of fatigue, and I think that was something that we were looking at too when we talked about it. The one thing I want to tell these folks is, please don't take the physical fitness portion for granted. The last time I was up there, they were going strong for 90 minutes, running the tower, doing push-ups with air packs and everything else. It is physically demanding. It is not something to take for granted. You better prepare for weeks ahead to be, as Chris said, you're going to physically be beat up. But you got to make it through PT first before you even start your day.
Yeah.
And that's hence one of the reasons, they got away from the summer class. It was just too challenging. both from an instructor cadre aspect and also the weather.
Okay, yeah. So leading up, if anyone has any questions about the academy, please put them in the chat. But leading up, usually there's a couple of weeks that you're in the department before, whether they allow you to ride calls or not. I don't know how that works, but do you guys kind of want to go over a little bit about, you know, what to do in those couple of weeks? Because I think that's kind of, so it's a weird time from what I can tell, because you're in the firehouse, but you're not in the firehouse. You know, you're not considered one of the line staff at that point, but I'm sure you can help out and learn and stuff like that. So what do you think for those couple of weeks? What are some things, do's and don'ts on that? Start, John.
And in my department, it's unique. It depends on your previous experience.
Okay.
Our guy was 1 or 2 days, and he was riding the rigs. He was going out the door. He was still getting, you know, we were going through his orientation is the word I'll use. Getting him to talk to folks who had just recently attended the academy. We have a packet that we set up for the recruit with SOPs, SOGs, everything you would imagine that they're going to get, and also conduct, how they're to behave, their uniforms, the basic things that you're going to set them up with, get them measured, get them prepared, get them to understand about what Chris talked about, what a day is going to be like up there. I know the recruit, the academy puts something out, but I think the biggest thing, and the other thing is our biggest thing was for them to get to know the folks on shift. We wanted them to be comfortable to come back if they had to wash their gear, or if they had a mechanical problem with their air pack, or something that they had faces and names to talk to. These are the people who are going to become your contact people. And we want you to understand that you're part of our family. You are now part of our family, and there's an expectation that goes with that, because you're a member of our department now, and we don't anticipate that we're going to have an issue. You're going to uphold, you know, what we feel are the traditions of excellence from our organization, and we expect nothing less. And we're going to come up and visit you to ensure that that's taking place. And also, when they are in our instance, they actually get sworn in before they leave. We do the same with the family. We want them to understand if there's issues, problems, we're here for you, and that they get oriented to the way that they're becoming part of our family. So it's not just the member. And that was something so that you guys realize. We had a meeting up there this past year with the folks from the academy and the fitness folks, and we talked about getting the families more involved, because I think in our business today, we're seeing a lot more psychological issues. And if the families can recognize it early, they can help us recognize it. And I think the academy is a great place to start. Chris?
Yeah, we do 1 week,
That's
no matter what experience before. We just finished with this class going on. That's my main goal. You know, you are a member of this fire department. You are welcomed into the family. Here's the situation. Here's an orientation. Here's how the fire department works. We also put them through a little bit of PT to expose them to stuff. We put them into self-contained breathing apparatus. We put them into tight situations as far as maze and not smoke, but, you know, theatrical smoke. We start to push the buttons, and we, you know, I like to say we take that rubber band and we start stretching it out and stretching it out. And I get to see what you truly are. You know, I've gotten your written scores, I got your physical agility. Now can you put your money where your mouth is? And how do you go about who's going to be a squad leader, who's not going to be a squad leader, who's going to excel? And that's really where I get my start of looking at everything. When these guys get done with the academy, we've changed it up a little bit, where we normally do 2 weeks post academy. We're going to do 3 weeks post academy, because I really have to focus on some driver training of ambulances. I have some individuals that are just, you know, I'll call them paper EMTs. They've never really practiced. So I need to make sure that they're good to go and be able to operate on an ambulance or an engine company or a Quinton company.
Yeah, I think it's worth bringing up too, and I don't know why that kind of jogged my thought on this, but for those of you that are, I'm assuming the guys here tonight are volunteers in a department. Your reputation starts as soon as you walk into the first fire department that you're a member of. This is a huge industry, but it's also the smallest industry. As they say in New York, it's the smallest large department there is. It's amazing. You will do something. I mean, take my drum example for one. Like I walked into that the week after I did that, that was the leading story in the hazmat refresher. And I didn't even know the person giving the story. They had heard it from someone who had heard it from someone. So just realize that everything that you do, good and bad, will follow you. And I've had good and bad follow me. But same within once you start in the department, that first week that you're there, not to put all the pressure on you in the world, but that will follow you. They'll remember, oh, that guy for 16 weeks and then comes back. When you're at the academy, they'll remember that guy for 16 weeks and then comes back. You may go take a class. A lot of the guys that teach with me have, teach at the CFA, and they'll run into someone and remember them from the academy and say, yeah, he was good at the academy, or, oh, he was a jerk job at the academy. So, don't think that just because you're in your small little suburban or rural department that your reputation won't follow you to your career department, or what we're seeing a lot now is career department to career department. You go to the academy for one department and end up moving to another. And sometimes it's for the right reasons, sometimes it's not. And when it's for the wrong reasons, your reputation usually follows you. So
yeah, that's spot on, Dan. Spot on.
And then the other thing I'll say is, more from what I see on the training side, but I would say it goes for recruit too. Check your equipment in the morning. And I know it sounds stupid. I bring that up when John mentioned about the SCBA before. When we come in and do a live burn, it's not a surprise that you're going to have to use SCBA. And I'm always amazed at how many SCBAs fail when they go to put them on to come into the burn building. Meaning you have an SCBA dedicated to you up there. We know it's a piece of equipment and it can fail. But if you check it in the morning and you come up to the instructor and say, hey, I checked my air pack this morning, it has an issue, what should I do? That looks a lot better than at 11 a.m. when you're doing your first real evolution and your SCBA fails because you didn't check it in the morning. Just shows a level of competence and care in your equipment, which really goes back to everything that we do for the most part. So
let me just go one further, Dan. It's the only thing that's going to keep you alive. And I had this discussion with somebody recently, and I said to them, if I work a 48, I only check it at my first shift. Well, that truck drives down the road all day long, and it goes, whether it's going food shopping, EMS calls, fire calls, wherever it's going, that SCBA gets rattled around in the back of that truck. And the chance of something not working properly is always there. My thing is, it's a small few moments to make sure that your respiratory protection is going to deliver what it's supposed to.
Yeah, and that's just an example of SCBA, but it can do anything. You could deal with if I change my flat tire, making sure my lug nuts are tight, taking that extra moment. These are the things that make a difference between someone that just wants to wear the firefighter t-shirt and someone that actually cares to be on the job or cares for their counterparts. So I'm not going to beat that to death, but I think it's worth bringing up that that's something that I see regularly that drives me nuts. It's not a surprise that we're using the SCBA tonight. Why would you not check it before we get into the training environment? So there was one more question someone texted me, so I'm going to read that. It's a little more in depth into where you are in the testing process, but when you make a list and get ranked, so let's say you get ranked and they do one round of interviews, say one round of chiefs interviews or one round of oral interviews, do they generally reconstruct the list, Or do you get one interview and then they throw you out? Meaning, say you're number 8 and they hire 1 through 5. Do you move up and become number 3? Or do they redo the interviews and you could then end up number 15? Or how, does it depend on the department and there's too many variables for us to bring up?
I would think it depends on if it's a civil service exam.
Yeah.
That's going to be number 1. That's going to have to stay the way it was. But I would say that if you re-interview, there is opportunity for people to move up based on where they're at. I've also seen examples of where they hired 10 and then you might have been interviewed the first time and it's a year later and they bring everybody that wasn't hired back in and they reestablish that list. It's not necessarily that you were next to be hired. So how do I want to say this? If you call human resources and they tell you, we can't tell you where you're ranked, which they have the right to do, then there's a good opportunity each time you're interviewed, they're probably reestablishing that list. Would you not agree, Chris?
Yeah, I think in our process, we established like the list at the end where we have, your written is this percentage, your oral, or I should say your physical agility is this, and your oral is this, and those 3 scores come up with your final ranking position, which, gets approved by the Board of Fire Commissioners and yada, yada, yada. So I think it's going to depend on different departments. Civil service, like John mentioned, has a lot of rules that they have to follow. And other departments are looking at it. So, try to figure out, and, again, sometimes try to, call somebody in the fire department that and they may be able to get some inside information too.
And prior to your testing, when you get the initial packet, a lot of times it'll tell you whether or not there's going to be a list. And that list may be valid for 2 years. I know back when I was testing, and we haven't touched on this yet, but how many tests should you be expected to take before you're successful? There's no such thing as I can take 5 tests and I'm guaranteed to get a job. I probably sat through, 8 tests, 10 tests, big departments, little departments before I got hired. And it was probably over a 10-year process, and you can't give up. What you need to do is continue to persist, pursue, and make yourself better, make yourself more attractive. I used to tell myself every year, I'm going to get 2 more certifications. Every year I want to better myself. And how do I improve, myself as a candidate? And what can I do to better myself? So, but I do believe the rankings, the consortium's a little different. They establish a list, but they establish multiple lists. So and it's based on certifications. So, and what the chiefs are looking for. So.
Well, real quick, I don't have any more questions here. If anyone else has any questions, put it in the chat window, please. But I think that's actually important to address. Why don't you just real quick, John, go through, we know what the consortium is, but I didn't know there were 3 different lists or whatever. So you want to just go through that quick on the difference with the consortium versus a single department?
Yeah. So the consortium puts out their exam, which I'm sure a number of these folks have sat on. You get through the written, which now this year is going to be online, as Dan talked about. Then you will be scheduled for a oral board evaluation, which will be online, sitting in front of a computer. You'll have a set test date and time, and you'll probably have a 20-minute window. You will be asked a myriad of questions, probably 5 to 7. The questions will be scored by people on a board, probably 2 or 3, watching your video and evaluating it based on your response. And their response, what they do is they have a sheet, a form that has certain questions on it. Did they hit this? Did they hit that? Did they hit this? Did they hit that? Did they hit this? And that's how your oral board score ranking takes place. So there's a level of, it's not a bias, it's not subjective, because of the fact that you're answering the question based on the answer sheet that they've come up with to the question. Now, once the scores are rendered, now they break it out. Is the individual, do they have the following certifications? Are they a paramedic? Well, yes, so they come out with their ranking across the board for the testing, the written. Then they go through the orals. Then they put the two together for each individual and they come out with a massive list. Then the list is assembled. Okay, how many of them are paramedic certified? That paramedic list breaks out and we have 17 people that are paramedics. Now it breaks out by highest score, highest oral, and paramedic, and then they get their ranking. So number 1 through 17. Then they'll move over. All right, let's look at EMT. Who's an EMT? Well, here's their written, here's their oral, here's their EMT. Let's rate them out. Finally, we're going to have a list with pretty much no certifications, and those are going to be the remaining people for the organizations that may not require EMT or paramedic. And that's the listing you're going to get, and that's how it rates.
Awesome. Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yeah.
And just so they realize, the one thing that a lot of people neglect to do is if you're taking the consortium test, as you update your information, certifications, you go from being an EMT to an EMTI, you go from an EMT to a paramedic, send that in. You're on a 2-year eligibility list that you can update at any time. That is absolutely critical, because every certification that you add, it might be something we're looking at. If you get your CDL or you get your Q, as you talked about, put that on there, because that now makes you a better candidate. And not that it may move you up the list, but if you're going over to the paramedic, well, it may put you into into that slot that there's nobody left on that list. And now someone looking with an opening is going to scoop you up.
Would you agree with my earlier statement that you've never seen as many openings for as few candidates as we're seeing in the last few months?
Absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, from a fire chief's perspective, there's a concern, and it's not a negative, but our candidate pool shrinking tells me that our job is not as attractive as it used to be to the general public. And there's some alarm to me for that. We know that, the fire service, the volunteer fire service is dwindling crazily because people don't have the time, or they don't have the desire to give their free time to an organization in their community that, is a vital part of it. And they may not understand how it works. And I also think the volunteer service, and it's not the tangent to go on, doesn't do a good job advertising themselves a lot. So, but it's an opportunity from a starting perspective to become an apprentice as a firefighter. There's no better way to start your career, in my eyes. Or if you're going to be an EMT, at least get some experience in a service. So when a guy like Chris interviews you, I've got experience. I'm riding with AMR in Bridgeport or New Haven or, wherever, or I'm with Nelson, or I'm with this group. It's definitely a help to have background experience. Your 2 nights in the ER are not experience. All right. Those don't count. It really doesn't.
Excellent. I'm pretty sure I can answer this question. Someone just asked this. For the consortium, do the departments reach out to you based on your ranking and certs, or do you apply to each department you are interested in? When you apply to the consortium, you're applying to all of those departments, and then they reach out to you, correct?
That's correct. So here's the thing. This was one of the things that scared me when I applied. Is the Mansfield Fire Department going to call me for an interview when I live in Trumbull? Do I want to drive 90 minutes to go to work every day? And the answer probably is no. When the departments look at their listings, a lot of them will, I want to say, look geographically. Somewhere, and I'll give you an example, somewhere like Wilton, I have a callback system. I need people that live, now we don't have a lot of guys anymore that live close to us, but it's enticing for me to have someone who lives within 30 miles. Because when I have a significant event, like today, we went to Westport for a major event, I got to hire people back. I need to cover the community quickly. If I can do that, great. And if there's people on the low end of the list that are geographically desirable, well, that's good for us. you know, and it's good for everybody, because if you live in Willimantic, you don't want to be driving to Norwalk for work, you know, or you're going to relocate. And we know that. So that's an understood. And we also, you know, we know that you're going to be, and we may interview people from that area, Mansfield, and say, are you willing to make the move? Are you willing to come down this way? But we don't have a residency clause, or we don't have a clause that says you have to live within 30 miles. And that's something you want to look at too. Make sure you research the department of what their rules are. You know, South Fire District, I believe you got to live within 20 miles, or North Haven also. So make sure you're willing to make that commitment when you take these tests, that you're going to have to move. It's part of their responsibility.
Cool. So we're just coming up on an hour 45, so I think it's probably time to head towards wrapping it up. So before I kind of wrap up, I'll open it up to both of you guys to just any closing remarks that you might have. So Chris, any closing remarks from you?
Don't give up. Don't give up. You know, you may not get hired the first department that you have. Don't go into the process unprepared. Try to, you know, everything that we looked at, everything we talked about tonight, you know, there's so much more information. The internet is huge. Make sure you have a good network ability, and ask questions. You know, I see the newer generation not asking questions and not wanting to approach someone. You know, if you look at it, one of my core values is leave a legacy. I want to make the fire service better than it was when I leave and I'm on my way out. So ask questions of the individuals and departments, ask questions of your friends, talk to other firefighters. We're all open books, and we're all willing to give that information. So be prepared, don't quit. And when you get on, just do your job.
Two things I'll leave you with.
Okay.
You're never going to leave an interview feeling like you knocked it out of the park. I will tell you that every time. If you do leave it and you think you killed it, you probably sucked. All right. And that's being frank. When I got my phone call to be hired, I thought I didn't do well. I really didn't. And I felt like I had let myself down. The other thing I will tell you is every interview you go to, oral interview, write down the questions that they asked you and build off those questions, because the chances of you being asked that same question again probably has a high probability. I'll be honest with you. I've built a business off of it because people's questions are almost identical. Most of the questions are the same question in most oral interviews. You know, tell me about yourself. Why do you want to be a firefighter? You know, simple things like that. But if you can do better and build yourself as a character to be able to answer that question confidently and with some fervor that is committed to telling me how much you want this job, tell me how much you want to work in the fire service. Don't let me have to guess. And I think Chris talked about that. Tell me how much you want to be a firefighter and be proud of it. You know, do you have lineage? You know, are you coming from a background in the service? Make sure, you know, and if you don't, tell them how you want to be the first in your family, you know, and why you want to do it. Don't do it for the benefits. Please don't do it for the benefits, because it's an injustice to all of us. All right. You can be a 1099 doing business, you know, a DBA, but I want you to be committed to the industry. And I want you to live a long, healthy life and provide a great community service. And that's what we're looking for. At least I am as a chief.
One last question. Yeah, go ahead, Chris. No, go. And then
I want someone who's going to walk in my office every day with a smile on their face, looking to make a difference. Because that doesn't happen.
Maybe that's because they work for you.
It could be, Dan. It could be. No, they work with me. They don't work for me.
All right. Someone asked a real quick last question, 1 or 2 words on this. Should I email a thank you letter to a company if I didn't get in and ask them why I didn't get on? I don't know. What do you think?
I think a thank you is always a gracious thing.
Probably not the second part.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get an answer.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah,
I
you
think,
won't.
I think at our level, I think at Chris's and I level, when we interviewed for chief's jobs, I think we'll get an answer, but a lot of times we would do it face to face. I think a thank you via email is exceptional, but you probably won't get a response because we don't want to create a bias.
Yeah, and yeah, don't worry if you don't get a response.
Right.
You know that you did the right thing. Send an email.
Correct.
Thank you, chief. Whatever. Blah blah blah. You're
There's
probably
my-
not going to get a response.
There's my other tangent. You can do the right thing without putting it on social media, right? So, you can say thank you for something. You can do the right thing without posting it or anything like that. Not that that's what that question was getting at. I just mean sometimes there's just a good thing with doing the right thing and knowing that you did the right thing without having to publicize it or anything like that.
And you bring up a point we did not talk about tonight. Social media.
Yeah. Oh,
Make
yeah.
sure you're clean,
Yeah.
you're neat, and you're not opinionized. Because guess where we start our research? It's really easy to look you up.
Where it's free.
There's
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and there's 10 solo cups, and I don't care if you're drinking water. All right. We have to look at the character of the people that are going to represent our organization. So
Yep.
during our pre-academy stuff, I went up to one recruit and I looked at him. I said, "Mountain bikes, huh?" And he kind of just like looked at me, and I went, "What's the name of your dog?" And his jaw dropped. I was like, "Yep, we've been looking at you on social media." So it's becoming more and more of a process in the initial part of all jobs, not just fire service jobs, but all jobs, schools, things of that nature. My daughter basically vetted individuals that were applying to a sorority, and she had an Excel spreadsheet, and she would look on social media, and if there was, John mentioned a red solo cup, you got red flagged. And we all know, hey, there could have been milk in it, but the red solo cup is associated with alcohol, and that's not something that in her case, her sorority wanted to be part of. So
that's what she told you, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah,
it's a good point though.
It's a reputation. It's a reputation.
Absolutely.
Social media is another resume. I hate to say it that way, but
yeah,
it's a true
Yep.
representation.
I'm glad that came up. I think that is important to bring up. So, well, I want to thank the guys that joined us tonight. Obviously, Chris and John, I have all the respect in the world for both of you, and thank you very much for participating tonight. When it comes to real estate, everyone talks about location, location, location. When it comes to the fire service, it's all about timing. And timing right now, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but timing right now is as good as I've ever seen it. I've seen some fantastic, back in my Trumbull days, there were some just fantastic firemen that were having trouble getting hired that would have been great and are great now in some departments, maybe one of yours, John, and Chris, but had trouble because there were so many applicants for so few spots. And I guarantee you they would have been shoo-ins in the first test right now. So if you're thinking about getting on the job, I really think now's the time. Not that it's never not the time, but I just think timing is it couldn't be better now. And there are some great departments hiring. And I think, and I know, Chris, we talked about this a little bit before, but when you're getting hired in a department, that's the best department in the world. It doesn't matter what it is, 3 years ago, Westport was the best fire department. And now I guarantee you, John says Wilton's the best fire department. So the fire department that you are part of is the best fire department in the world. And the house that I'm in, because my fire department's huge, the house I'm in is the best house on the job. I don't care. And it doesn't matter that I was in another house a few years ago that was the best house on the job. So it is what you make of it. If you go in saying, oh, well, I'm just here, I'm just there, it's going to carry among the other guys. And so if you come in and saying, you know what, I am in the best, you're in Wilton Station 2 with one other guy, but damn, that's the best firehouse in Wilton. it's going to carry, and you're going to enjoy your day a lot more. So at least that's my opinion. Siemens Lane, best training academy in the state. Don't let anyone
That's
tell you.
it, man. That's
Uh,
it.
but
Academy South.
Thank you guys for your time. I enjoyed it. And I just, I think it's an exciting time for people that want. I always love the one downside of flash fires. I don't get to teach the fire ones and the recruits, because that's always, like, to me, there's something different about teaching someone that's fresh into it. And that's definitely something that I haven't done in a few years in this. So thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate it. And I hope everyone listening tonight got something out of it.
And if anybody has questions, feel free. Chris and I know we'll accept a phone call, a text, an email, whatever. Reach out. We want to
And
see
if
you
anybody,
be
yeah,
successful.
if anybody is successful in getting the jobs, shoot myself or John and Danny a text just saying, hey, I got onto the job such and such. Would love to come see you graduate.
Yep.
So,
Or I'll get to teach at the academy. And Dan, I don't do it per diem. I do it for free.
oh, all right. Well, I'll do it for free with you. So let me
Karma, buddy. Give back to this business.
All right, guys. Have a good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.